Boker Tov. Today's Daf Yomi is Nedarim Mem Zayin, Nedarim 47. We're going to start on the bottom of Vavim Beis, in the bottom of 46b, 4 lines from the bottom, where the Gemara tells us that we learned to the Mishnah, Hamudar Anami Chavero. Let's say somebody says to his friend that, let's say Shimon is not allowed to get any benefit from Ruvain, but Ruvain has a bathhouse or he has an olive press that were rented out in the city. So if Ruvain, who's the person who rents it out, if he has tfisas yad, if he has an ongoing share of or ownership, or not really ownership, management over the property, then we're going to say under those circumstances, then the mudar, the one who's prohibited to have benefit, i.e. Shimon, is not going to be allowed to benefit from it. So Gemara clarifies the Mishnah, Vikama tfisas yad. So how much is this amount that the person who's renting it out, how much of a share does it need to have in order for it to be considered tfisas yad? So what is the definition of tfisas yad? So Amar Rav Nachman says, when the person who's renting out is receiving a share of the business, these are examples. It receives a half, a third, a quarter, meaning to say that he has a share that's a significant share of the business. But if he has a share that is less than that, it's less than the share, then we're going to say he doesn't have a tfisas yad. Then it's not going to be considered like a tfisas yad, and so therefore he's going to be allowed to, then somebody else who's mudar enough from him, in this case Shimon, will be allowed to benefit from the bathhouse or the olive press. Abaye says, even if the renter, i.e. Ruvain, has the person who's renting it out has even less than that as an ongoing share, also it would still be prohibited for Shimon to gain a benefit. And because it's still considered tfisas yad if he's getting any share whatsoever from the profits of the business. So under what circumstances will it be permitted? To mekabel betaska, if the one who's renting it out receives just a set fee. He basically really just rented out the property and just receives a set fee for the one who's renting it. Then if that person who's renting it, then Shimon would be allowed to use it, because since he's just getting a set fee, he really doesn't have any share or percentage of the ongoing business. And so therefore, indeed, he would not be able to, then he'd be able to benefit from it. So now we go to the top of Mem Zayin Amud Aleph. Says the Mishnah on the top, says the Gemara on the top of Mem Zayin Amud Aleph, HaOmer L'Chavero, that a Mishnah had said that if a person had said to his friend, he says, I'm not going to enter into your field or your house. Then under those circumstances, we had said, if the owner of the field dies, or if he sells it to another person, then the one who makes the vow is going to be permitted to enter into this field or to this house, because he said, I'm not entering into your house or your field. And so therefore it's no longer his house or his field. But if the person who made the vow says, into this house or into this house or this field, then even if the person who owns the house or the field dies or sells it to somebody else, he's going to be prohibited to go into it, because he said Sadazu, this house, and not your house. So it's on the house and not on the person. So Avimi asks the following question. So as a background for this question, we're going to say that this law was said by a person who basically prohibits this house on this other person on himself. Ruvain prohibits Shimon's house on himself. And the reason why that such a vow is effective is because a person is able to prohibit upon himself an object that's not his. But somebody who prohibits upon his friend, if somebody wants to prohibit something on his friend, he's only allowed to prohibit upon his friend. If Ruvain wants to prohibit something on Shimon, he's only allowed to prohibit something that belongs to Ruvain himself. But Ruvain can't prohibit, obviously, Shimon's possessions on Shimon. That would be obviously something that is prohibited. So the Gemara now raises the following question. Avimi asks the following question. If somebody says to his friend, let's say a person says, this house, which I own, which belongs to me, that I take a vow you're not allowed to go into it. Or let's say he dies, or he sells it to somebody else. Mahu. So under these circumstances, what's going to be the law? So if Reuven has a house, and he says to Shimon, "You're not allowed to come into this house. I take a vow that you're not allowed to come in." And then Reuven dies, or he sells the house to somebody else. What's the law? Adam also davar shabarshuso kishayetzim rashuso. Oh, whoa. Can Reuven prohibit this thing which is shayach to him, which he owns, i.e., this house, even for after? If he prohibits it on Shimon, will it remain prohibited even after it leaves his possession or not? That's the basic question. So Amarava Tashma Omer with no. So Rava says, let's bring a proof. So let's bring a proof from the Mishnah in Baba Kama. What does the Mishnah in Baba Kama say? Omer with no konim shiataneneli. Let's say a person says to his son, "You're not allowed to get. I take a vow that you're not allowed to get benefit from me." Umeis, and then after the person says this to his son, the father dies. So we're going to say under those circumstances, Yirashenu. Then we're saying under those circumstances, the son is allowed to inherit him because he only made the vow that you're not allowed to benefit from me while I'm alive. And after he dies, the son's allowed to inherit. But if he says, B'chayev b'mosi, but if he says in my lifetime and in my death, you're not allowed to benefit from me, umeis, and then the father dies, well, Yirashenu. Then the son cannot inherit because he's not inheriting because he says, even after I die, you can't benefit from me. We see from here a person has the ability to, now we're not talking about a case where it's not clear, but what we're talking about a case where it's completely clear is what his intentions were, as we said earlier on Daf Membeis, where it's completely clear what his intentions are. A person certainly has the ability to prohibit something that he owns now, even after it leaves his possession. That's a covenant that he put into the sale when he sells the deed. So it's like similar to that. So this is similar that he says he's allowed to make a vow that you can benefit from any of these possessions even after it leaves my possession. Shema Mina. So now the Gemara introduces, so since the Gemara has answered Rava's question, that a person can prohibit something even after it leaves his possession, Rami Bar Chama raises another question. Is a person able to prohibit on his friend also something that was exchanged for the prohibited item? So that becomes the question. So that Tananas, and we learned in the Mishnah in Baba Kama, if a person had placed in front of him certain fruits, and he says, Konam Perosa Elo Alai, these fruits are prohibited upon me, or he says, Konim Hein Alpi, or these fruits are prohibited on my mouth, different versions of it, or Konim Hein Alpi, or they're prohibited to my mouth. Asur, says the Mishnah in Baba Kama, Asur B'chilufein. If he switched these fruits with other people, we're going to say that it is prohibited. That the chilufein, that the exchange of these fruits also becomes prohibited. Ubi gidulein, and also with their growth, meaning to say, if you sold these fruits for 20 gold coins, then you're also not allowed to exchange these golden coins. You're not allowed to get benefit from these golden coins. And also, if you took these fruits and you planted them, and you took their seeds and you planted them, then you're also going to not be allowed to get benefit, because since you prohibited these fruits, you made them like hektish. And so since you made them like something that's sacred temple property, also their exchange and their growth is going to be prohibited. So since the Gemara has clarified this law, that if somebody says Kodim Peros Elu, that you're prohibited in their chilufei and in their kidulei and in their exchange and in their growth, the Gemara now brings another question. So by Rami Bar Chama, Rami Bar Chama asks this question: if you said Kodim Peros Elu Aponi, let's say you said my apples are prohibited. Reuven says my apples are prohibited on Shimon, but not on himself. He only prohibits it on himself in the first case, but now he's prohibiting upon Shimon. Are we going to say Ma'al B'chilufei? And ours also, we had said before, Adam Oser Davar Shabar Shuso, even you could prohibit something that's in your domain upon somebody else, even after it leaves your domain. But are we going to say the same law by their chilufein, mal b'chilufein? If you say these apples are prohibited upon me, then you exchange the apple for 5 gold coins. Are those 5? If you say these apples are prohibited on Shimon, then you exchange the apples for 5 gold coins. Are those gold coins also prohibited on Shimon? Do we say, and under these circumstances, mi amrina, do we say, gabe delay, when as it relates to himself? So do we say that? What's the reason why the Mishnah Bava Kama says that their giduim, that their growth is prohibited? Is because somebody makes a vow, he intended to prohibit also their growth, and so therefore we could say gabe delay when he prohibits something upon himself. Since a person is prohibiting is able to prohibit the fruits of his friend upon himself, a person is also able to prohibit something that's not yet in existence, like their chilufein, and so therefore he's also to prohibit the chilufein on himself. But gabe chavero, but with respect to his friend, you're not allowed to prohibit your friend's fruits upon your friend, because there's two problems here. One is that the fruits are not his, and secondly, that the fruits are not, that your friend is not in your domain to prohibit upon him. And so therefore, would we say in this case that you're not allowed to prohibit something that's not yet in existence upon your friend, i.e. their chilufein? So that's the question that the Gemara raises. That Rabbi Bacham is asking. Delmar, perhaps we say the following. Or perhaps we say, what's the reason why they're on the top of Mem Zayin on the base? What's the reason why their growth is prohibited? What's the reason? Is because Mishum de Chilufein Kikidu and Dami. What's the reason why their growth is prohibited? Is because the exchange that the reason why the growth is prohibited isn't because when the person prohibits something upon himself, he's also intending to improve their exchange, but it's rather because that their exchange is like their growth, that the chachamim, that the rabbis made a ksera, they made a decree on something that was exchanged with the prohibited item, that will be prohibited to have benefit, just like something that grows from Isuri Hanaf, or something that's prohibited is going to be prohibited. Or and it doesn't matter if it's yours or it's your friend's. So how do we answer this question? So the Gemara proves that the chilufin, that this concept, that the reason why chilufin are prohibited is not because of a gzera. So we learn from the following. Amar v'achabar min yumi tashma, and we learn to the braysa. Ha'omer le'ishto, one who says to his wife, Koneim shani nanelech. He says, I make a vow that you're not allowed to benefit from him, and he's not allowed to get any benefit from his own produce. So under these circumstances, and we have to clarify right away that the Ran says the only way he could do this is because she was still in Arusa. She wasn't fully married. So he's allowed to make a vow that she's prohibited to get benefit from him because she's not fully married yet. And then Lova, the woman goes, his wife goes and borrows from other people in order to get support. And now the creditors come and want to make a claim against the husband, because even though she's not allowed to benefit from the husband, he still has a lien. He's meshubadwa. She has a lien upon him, and the lenders are able to collect from him that which they lent her. And so we see from here that a woman is not allowed to benefit from her husband directly, but she can still benefit from this loan. So my time, and what's the reason? What's the reason why these creditors can come and make a claim against the husband? Because we're saying that even though she was attenuated, she was getting the money from a third party. It's not like a growth, and so therefore, if somebody makes a vow against his wife, the chilufin are not prohibited upon the wife, and so therefore, we could say the same thing here by the fruits. So Amarava, no, maybe that case is different. maybe we could say that only in that case specifically, we're going to say only when the person comes to exchange it directly with his own hands. That's what lechatchila means here. Huduo, that's not what it's permitted. Avad, but if he didn't actually do the exchange, but it was done by somebody else, then it's going to be an exchange. Like in this case, his wife did it, and so therefore maybe it's a valid exchange. So the Gemara says, okay, let's bring a different proof from a Mishnah in Kiddushin, Vav Amabez, where it says Hamikadesh Esaisha Bepero Sa'arla. Let's say a person wants to betroth his wife with the fruits of Arla. Now, Arla is something that is prohibited to have benefit from it. It's the fruit that you grow the first 3 years. Ain't a mikudashes. You're not allowed to benefit. You're not allowed to betroth your wife, prospective wife, with the fruits of Arla, because it's something that's prohibited to have benefit. It has no law of money. It has no monetary value, and so therefore he hasn't betrothed her. But let's say the one who wants to betroth his wife with these fruits, mecharan. Let's say he sold them, v'kidesh bidmeyan, and he betrothed this woman with their money. Harezu mikudashes. Then we're going to say she is betrothed. And doesn't this prove that if we would have said that the chilufin are prohibited also in Anah, then he wouldn't be able to do it. So we see from here that the chilufin are permitted because he took this Arla fruits, he exchanged them with somebody else for gold coins, and then he betrothed her. And we say it's a valid betrothal. The Gemara says, no, this case is different. Also here we could say the same thing. Only if you exchange them, only lechatchila. The things themselves, that hudulo, that is what is not permitted to benefit from, because the rabbis are prohibiting it. But the avad, meaning to say you're not really allowed to betroth, in this case, lechatchila means different. You're not really allowed to betroth this woman with the gold coins, but if you did it, it will be valid. And so therefore, it's not a proof of whether or not you could do it lechatchila. So the Mishnah now, it says another Mishnah, Hareini alecha cherem. So a person says to his friend, and he is from the Galilee, where they say cherem, it means to say that your things upon you is like you're making consecration to the temple, and so therefore he's prohibiting himself upon his friend like hektish. He says, "Behold, I'm upon you like cherem," meaning to say that you can't get benefit from me. Hamudar asar. Then the person who's prohibited to have benefit is not going to be allowed to have benefit. But he says, "Harei at alai cherem." You are cherem upon me. I know there are. So the one who makes the vow is going to be prohibited. Hareini alecha v'atalai. And now is where we start to get complicated. He said, I am prohibited upon you, and you are prohibited upon me. Shneim asurin. Then both of them are going to be prohibited to benefit from each friend. So, because, okay, so till now we haven't said anything, but now we want to define what this means, that they're prohibited. So they're both going to be allowed to benefit from those things that generally speaking, the people who go up to Babylon, the pilgrims were allowed to use, meaning to say the property that was not owned by a specific individual, but only by the community, because the things that were made for these pilgrims, they were declared ownerless for the use of all of Israel. And so they're not shayach, they're not owned by any specific person. And so therefore, it's not considered like you're benefiting from your friend. And top of Mem Chesam and Alf, but if they were partners, if they were members of a town, like they're citizens of a city, then they're both not going to be allowed to benefit from that city, because we say all the people of that city have an ownership over it. And so therefore, each one of them is benefiting. If you use something like that, you're going to be benefiting from the share of that city. What are the examples of this? What's considered to be like something that's from the pilgrims? Could go in Harabayas, the Temple Mount, so the Temple Mount, the courtyards of the temple, and the wells that they would make these cisterns in the middle of the road for the pilgrims to eat, to drink from. So those things were declared to be ownerless. They're not owned by any individual, and so therefore, even though they're not allowed to benefit from each other, they're going to be allowed to benefit from this water and this temple and this area. What's something that's considered to be part of the city? So therefore, if you're not allowed to benefit from the other person, you can't benefit from this part. Could go in our chava, the plaza in the middle of the city, it's the bathhouse, Beis HaKnesses, the synagogue. So each person is considered to be an owner of the synagogue. And that's assuming that they're paying membership, and then they're going to be considered to be owners of it. Teva, and then this is the bima that they used to put the Torah scroll on, and Vasafarim. These are the Torah scrolls that you read from, and under all these things, since they're owned by the whole city, everybody's benefiting from it. Va'kosev chalko l'nasi, and somebody who writes his portion. Somebody who gives his share of the city to the prince or to the president of the community, then his friend, who is not allowed to benefit from him, is going to be allowed to benefit from those things because there no longer is. He's giving them away. Whereas Rabbi Yehuda Omer, he says whether or not you write it to the nasi or you write to a regular person, since he gave his share to somebody else, it's going to be permitted for the other person to benefit. Ma bain. We'll stop here. God willing, we'll pick this up. We'll pick this up on tonight when we do the next stuff.